Last year I had the chance to try the OPPO Find N and it was an extremely pleasant surprise. It had a nice and compact design that screamed quality. It had a no-gap design and an excellent hinge that concealed the crease better than any other foldable on the market. The OPPO Find N2 is now available, and it delivers all of that, plus some additional refinements that we'll discuss in this video. Before we begin, please keep in mind that the review unit we have is designed for the Chinese market. At the time of recording, this phone is not available in global markets. The state of tablet and foldable app development is most likely a factor, but OPPO may reconsider. That being said, I was able to install Google Play services on this phone without issue, and everything went smoothly from there. However, we'll go over the software in greater detail later. The OPPO Find N2 closely resembles its predecessor, but it simply feels like a higher quality product. It is constructed from metal, carbon fiber, and glass. It is available with a glass back or a vegan leather back. It has flatter sides than its predecessor, which is a good thing. The phone has chamfered edges and is extremely comfortable to hold and use. Without a doubt, it is the most comfortable vertically folding smartphone I've ever used. This thing weighs 42 grams less than the Find N. The Find N is heavier than the Galaxy Z Fold 4, while the Find N2 is significantly lighter. The vegan leather model is 233 grams in weight, while the glass back model is 237 grams. This was accomplished in part due to the use of carbon fiber by OPPO. It is also slightly thinner than its predecessor, which is always a welcome change in foldables. For this phone, OPPO created its second-generation flexion hinge, which is just as good as the first. Actually, it's even better. According to OPPO, the crease is even less visible, and it is not nearly as bad as the one on the Galaxy Z Fold 4. OPPO even managed to reduce the number of parts inside the hinge from 138 to 100, which is a significant accomplishment. You can even fold the phone at 45-degree and 125-degree angles and set it down. It's quite versatile and, to be honest, feels great to use. The folding mechanism is sturdy and, quite frankly, screams quality while in use. I've used a lot of foldables over the years, and this is my current favorite foldable hardware. In my opinion, other OEMs should strive for this form factor. OPPO did an excellent job here. People will undoubtedly point out that it does not provide an official IP rating. You should absolutely not get this phone wet. The Galaxy Z Fold 4 has it, but I never use my phones, in general, in the rain, and I'm never in situations where I need it. So it's not a big deal, and I'd rather have a smaller form factor, less crease, and a gapless design than an IP rating. Of course, that may not be the case for you. OPPO also includes a case in the box, at least it was included in our retail box. That means it will definitely come with the vegan leather model, but we're not sure about the glass back model. In any case, this case is quite nice. It's made of plastic, but it has a slight rubbery feel to it. It's difficult to explain, but it feels really good. This is a two-part case. The back part snaps onto the device's back, while the front part has sticky pads on the inside. When fully closed, the case is extremely comfortable. The display aspect ratio distinguishes the OPPO Find N2 from other vertically folding phones. The Find N2, like its predecessor, favors a horizontal orientation. Of course, we're referring to its main display. It has a 7.1-inch foldable 1792 by 1920 LTPO AMOLED display. That display looks fantastic, noticeably better than the one on the Find N, which was also excellent. It has bright colors and deep blacks, and it can be quite loud when necessary. At its brightest, it can reach 1550 nits of brightness. This display is also HDR10+ compatible. The second display is 5.54 inches in size. It has a resolution of 2120 by 1080 and is a mostly flat AMOLED panel with a refresh rate of 120 Hz. However, its right side is slightly curved for ease of use. The Gorilla Glass Victus protects this display, which has a peak brightness of 1350 nits. This is a significant improvement over the Find N's cover panel, which has a 60 Hz panel. To be honest, the Find N2's cover display looks fantastic as well. It's both punchy and smooth. The blacks are rich, and the viewing angles are superb. To make matters even better, both displays have a touch sampling rate of 480 Hz. Many people aren't interested in that, but if you are, you'll be glad to hear it. I'd noticed how enjoyable it is to interact with it, so I looked it up. It's very nice of OPPO to deliver such quality with both displays, presenting us with a significant improvement over the first-generation model. The Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 powers the OPPO Find N2. In 2022, that processor demonstrated its capabilities in a number of phones. It is not only extremely powerful, but it also consumes very little power. It also performed admirably inside the OPPO Find N2. OPPO coupled with 12GB or 16GB LPDDR5 RAM. Along with Android 13, the package includes UFS 3.1 flash storage. ColorOS 13 by OPPO is pre-installed. When it comes to sheer smoothness and performance, I really don't have any complaints. Everything was very quick, from opening and closing apps to consuming multimedia to image editing and gaming. Playing games on the main display was a fantastic experience, and that chip kept everything running smoothly. So, the bottom line is that I didn't experience any lag, slowdowns, or other issues. We'll talk about the software later, I won't go into detail about it now. Oh, and the fingerprint scanner works flawlessly. It's quick and precise. You can configure it to activate with a physical press or simply by placing your finger on the power key. The OPPO Find N2 comes with a 4520 mAh battery. It has 20 mAh more capacity than the OPPO Find N. The cover display, on the other hand, has a 120 Hz refresh rate and is slightly larger this time around. The Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 performs admirably in terms of power consumption, and ColorOS also takes care of the battery. I was initially concerned, but it turns out that the battery life is actually quite good. I was able to get about 6.5 to 7 hours of screen time out of the device. That being said, I used both the main and cover displays extensively, but I'd say the main display was in use for the majority of the day. It is possible to get more than 7 hours of screen on time, it all depends on your usage and battery settings. Overall, I was pleasantly surprised by the battery life on this device. 67-watt charging was also very helpful. It was extremely fast, as I was able to recharge the phone completely in about 40 minutes. The device also supports reverse wired charging, but unlike its predecessor, it does not support wireless charging at all. However, I understand why OPPO did it, to keep the phone as light and thin as possible while avoiding unnecessary heating. The OPPO Find N2 comes with a 50-megapixel primary camera, a 48-megapixel ultra-wide camera, and a 32-megapixel telephoto camera. When it comes to the main camera, the performance was excellent. I was able to capture some really nice images that appear quite realistic. They didn't appear overly processed or underexposed. The sharpening was never overpowering, and the camera also performed admirably in terms of exposure and HDR images. When it comes to the main camera, I've noticed that it tends to oversaturate the reds, but only if there's too much red in the frame. Most cameras, however, do this, and it's not as bad as it sounds. It also doesn't go out of its way to brighten up scenes in order to make them appear unrealistic. In auto mode, it brightens them just enough to make them look nice, but it doesn't make nighttime shots look like daytime shots. And, yes, you can use auto mode for nighttime shots as long as it's not completely dark. However, there is a night mode included, which can brighten up scenes significantly and does an excellent job. What I did notice is that, in darker scenes, the phone has a tendency to crush blacks, which can be a problem. To be honest, I'm extremely pleased with the main camera. It does an excellent job. The ultra-wide camera does add a bit of saturation. When you switch to the ultra-wide camera, you will notice that the colors are more saturated. The color science is not the same, despite OPPO's efforts to keep it as close as possible. However, the ultra-wide camera performs admirably. It has a 115-degree field of view and can be used with confidence in most situations. When shooting in the dark, however, we recommend using the main camera because the difference is significant. The telephoto camera reduces saturation slightly more than the main camera, it is the inverse of the ultra-wide camera. The results are satisfactory but not spectacular. You do get 2x optical zoom here. This is also a camera you can trust, unless you're in extremely low light, in which case the main camera is a far better option. The phone also has a macro mode, which works well as long as there is light in the shot. However, do not attempt to use it at night. It's not the best macro mode I've seen, but it's not terrible either. The phone can record 4K video at 60 frames per second and does so admirably. The footage is stable, with no warping or other anomalies. It also performs well in low light. Overall, I'm very pleased with these cameras. When it comes to foldables, I always assume the worst, but OPPO did a good job here. It should be noted that the OPPO Find N2 ships with Android 13 and ColorOS 13, but this software is only available in China. At the time of this review, OPPO had no plans to release this phone in global markets, owing to the current state of tablet and foldable app development. That could change in the future. Having said that, I was able to install Google services on the device without issue, and everything worked fine. I did encounter a few annoyances along the way, owing primarily to the fact that this software is designed for China. To begin with, many apps that you don't need or want come pre-installed. The good news is that you can get rid of the vast majority of them. That was basically the first thing I did. Don't worry, if you make a mistake, there is an option to restore the apps you removed. ColorOS also has battery management. Aside from the ones ColorOS automatically adds, you can only add 5 apps to the auto-launch list. This can be a problem for some apps. Though, to be fair, the China version of ColorOS 13 performs far better than I recall on the Find N. I couldn't get notifications for a lot of apps there in time, mostly because they weren't on the auto-launch list. Things are a little different in this case, as I'm getting notifications for apps that aren't on the list more frequently. Still, I wish things were as simple as they are on ColorOS's global version. Background apps are treated differently. To be honest, I encountered a few strange bugs, but nothing too bothersome. When using adaptive display brightness, for example, the brightness tends to increase dramatically while you're using the device, then gradually decrease back to normal for no apparent reason. Some of those bugs were fixed in the most recent phone update, but not the one I just mentioned. The good news is that OPPO will most likely continue to push updates to the device on a regular basis, so I hope those minor annoyances are resolved. Given that this is a Chinese version of ColorOS, I was also unable to change the default launcher. A third-party launcher app is not permitted here. You can, but you can't make it your default, so every time you swipe up to go home, you'll be taken to ColorOS launcher. ColorOS lacks some basic features, such as controlling the app grid on the home screen, support for advanced app shortcuts, and proper icon pack support, which is very annoying. For that purpose, I would much rather use Nova Launcher, Microsoft Launcher, Niagara Launcher, or one of the other options. That is possible in the global version, but not in this one. The FlexForm mode, for starters, is activated when you open the phone at an angle of 45 or 125 degrees. This is a unique mode, similar to what Samsung provides on the Galaxy Z Fold 4. This method can be used to create a small laptop. It's also useful for the camera app because you can prop the phone up to take a group selfie or something. You can also activate split screen mode by swiping down from the top of the screen with 2 fingers. ColorOS allows you to split 2 apps horizontally or vertically, depending on your needs. You can even configure app combinations to launch from a home screen icon. For example, you can open YouTube and WhatsApp simultaneously, tap the center of the screen, and save that combination. It'll now always be there for you to jump into. A screenshot can be taken by swiping 3 fingers across the screen. Swiping across one app will capture only a screenshot of that app, swiping across both will capture the entire screen if you have 2 apps open side by side. To be honest, the gestures feel quite intuitive to use. You can use a variety of such software features, and to be honest, almost all of them are well optimized. Needless to say, foldable phones are now available to the general public. For one thing, they're still quite pricey, and the form factor isn't for everyone. If you frequently get your phone wet, this device is not for you. There are also some ColorOS quirks to be aware of, primarily because this build is not intended for global markets. On the other hand, in my opinion, this is the best foldable hardware available. It's extremely well made, with a gapless design, minimal creases, and a very dependable folding mechanism. When folded, it's also great for one-handed use, and it has a dependable camera and battery life, not to mention great displays and fast charging. Determine what you want, then weigh your options. Given that OPPO was aiming for this form factor, it's difficult to criticize the IP rating and wireless charging. Both of these would increase the phone's size.